Thank you. Well, before I say my bit, I've got a brief statement from Leanne Wood, the new leader of Plaid Cymru. Wrgylch yr ystafell dosbarth, mae modd cyflwyno gyrfa yn y lluoedd arfog mewn modd deniadol i bobl ifanc sy'n hawdd i moldio. Yn enwedig rheini nad ydynt yn hyderus y gallan ddod o'r hyd i waith mewn meysydd eraill. Wy'n bendant o'r barn mae swyddfeydd recrwtio'r weinyddiaeth amddiffyn sydd wedi lleoli ymron i bob un o brif drefi Cymru yw'r llefydd gorau i fynd iddynt os ych chi am chwilio am wybodaeth ynglyn ag ymuno ar fyddin. Yn y rhan fwyaf o weddill Ewrop, nid oes caniatâd i swyddogion recrwtio'r lluoedd arfog fynd mewn i ysgolion. Mae Plaid Cymru wedi lleisio'n gyson a chadarn ein gwrthwynebiad i ryfeloedd hyd yn oed yn Iraq ac Afghanistan. I ni hefyd wedi ymgyrchu chybu ymwybyddiaeth o'r anawsterau sy'n wynebu cyn-filwyr wrth iddynt addasu i fyw tu hwnt i faes y gad. Yn lle bod mewn perygl o fynd i garchar neu o fod yn digartre ac yn byw o'r strydodd, i ni wedi pwyso'n ddygn mwyn iddynt gael y cymorth dyledus ac angenrheidiol. Dyle unrhyw benderfyniad i ymuno'r lluoedd arfog gael ei gymryd ar ôl derbyn gwybodaeth y tu allan i gatiau'r ysgol. In a classroom atmosphere, a career in the armed forces can be presented as being attractive to impressionable teenagers, especially those who lack confidence that they will be able to find work in other fields. I am firmly of the view that the numerous MOD recruitment offices, which are situated in almost every major town throughout Wales, are the best places for anyone seeking information about joining the armed forces to go. In most of the rest of Europe, recruitment officers for the armed forces are not allowed into schools. Plaid Cymru has been consistent and vocal in our opposition to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We have also campaigned to raise awareness of the difficulties former soldiers have in adjusting to life away from the combat zone. Instead of being at risk of ending up in prison or on the streets as homeless, we have pushed hard for them to receive the help they need and indeed deserve. A building most people know as the Temple of Peace, of course. Professor Lord Davis gave this wonderful building to the people of Wales in 1938 as a memorial to, I quote, those gallant men from all nations who gave their lives in the war that was to end war. He fought during the Great War and had seen for himself the pain and suffering that war brings. And so, before I go any further, I want to say what a wonderful tribute it is to his memory and the legacy which he left our people in the heart of what I'm proud to call my home, our capital city, by holding this event here tonight. I'm also glad that this event is taking a different spin, if you like, on the Republican question. There's no escaping the fact that Republicanism is a minority in Wales and throughout the UK, even though its greatest competitor is normally apathy. It is sensible, therefore, that as people who believe in the sovereignty of the people of Wales and in the superiority of peace over conflict, we're showing our disgust at the fact that the armed forces are still permitted to recruit school children into the three branches of the armed forces. And while we are still at war, sending them to fight, and often, tragically, to die. Young men and women from all over Wales have joined the army, and after training have been sent to Iraq and Afghanistan. A number of them have come home in Union flag-draped coffins. Why? Well, I doubt it's because they understand the political motivations of those who send them to war, and I doubt it's because they really want to protect Queen and country. Joining the armed forces is often seen as being the only way out, especially if you're from a disadvantaged background. Take Merthyr Tydfil as an example. It's one of the poorest areas in Wales, and as it happens, also has one of the highest recruitment rates to the armed forces. In fact, Wales sends more people into the forces than any other part of the United Kingdom. A coincidence, perhaps, or rather a very clever tactic to target young people from poorer backgrounds into what the army will have you believe is an extremely rewarding career. Never mind the fact that after you've seen active duty and you've been discharged, you're extremely likely to end up with mental health issues, possibly homeless or in prison, and with little support during your post-forces life. Wales is a modern country. We may not be the most affluent part of the United Kingdom by far, but in the 21st century, we should be working on developing areas like Merthyr into towns where our young people needn't worry about what they're going to do after school, where they needn't have to make a choice between joining the forces or living on the dole. That's no life, and that's no decision that I want anyone in Wales to have to make. What fascinates me, really, is the fact that the army can go into schools and can try to recruit our young people. But if you're a political party, you have to tread very carefully indeed about what you say in school. Now, I accept that when politicians and political parties speak with kids, there ought to be as much exposure to other views as possible. But shouldn't that also be the case for the army? I remember when I was in my first year of sixth form in Ysgol Gyfun in the Swansea Valley, and one of my friends and I tried to set up a branch of Plaid Cymru Youth, or Cymru X as it was then, in school. We gave a presentation during assembly and said that anyone who wanted to come to our meeting could do so. Later that day, we were informed by our head teacher that we couldn't go ahead and set up the group, as a complaint had been received by the LEA, the local education authority, about Plaid Cymru going into schools and trying to politicise kids. I happen to believe that there's nothing wrong with political groups being set up within schools. When I stood for election to Cardiff Council as a Plaid Cymru candidate in Cateys last month, the turnout was a shockingly low 17.6%. I believe that that is because people are leaving schools these days without having had a decent political education. So yes, politics should be allowed into schools so that young people are going on to university or into a job as fully aware and responsible citizens who are ready to fulfill what I believe to be the most important and fundamental of all civic duties. As it happens, though, we weren't politicising children. But even if we were, that would be better than what the army does now. We were trying to get young people involved in politics. They tried to get them to sign up, to kill, and to be killed. Don't get me wrong, I do respect anyone who goes to war. To put one's life in danger, sometimes to lose one's life, in defence of an ideal or a country, not just this country, but any country, is an extremely honourable thing to do. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm criticising individual men and women in uniform. What I'm saying is that the act of war, as waged by states against each other, is dishonourable. In this day and age, here we are, still blowing each other to pieces, just as they did centuries ago. As a Welshman who values his freedom, I want to pay respect to veterans who've lost their lives in the line of duty. But as a pacifist, I want to show my belief that peace must come before war. So please don't think that I want to draw away from the huge sacrifice that the armed forces make. The point I want to make this evening, indeed the point that this event is making, is that if any adult wants to join the forces of his or her free will, then that's their choice. Children shouldn't be given a false image of what it is to be in the armed forces. And the armed forces shouldn't be able to go into our schools and recruit children into their ranks. I don't believe in war. I don't believe in international conflict. I accept, however, that at this point in time, it would be dreadfully naive to think that the international community would commit to never again go to war. But what I cannot and do not accept is young Welsh boys and girls, men and women, in our schools being exposed to British propaganda and thinking that their only option in life is to join the army and fight in the name of the British state and the English Queen. Before I finish, I just want to touch on the monarchy. And before I say any more, I want to point out that I use the terms Mrs. Windsor and the Queen interchangeably. After all, one is her name and the other's her hobby when she's not busy entertaining Swazi and Bahraini tyrants. This year, Mrs. Windsor is celebrating 60 years on the British throne. Since 1952, she has been Queen of the United Kingdom, but the United Kingdom, over which she has reigned for 6 decades, has seen dramatic change since her accession. This is the 21st century. But here we are with an unelected and hereditary head of state, who heads a hierarchy of people who are deemed to be senior than the rest of us crown subjects, simply because of the bloodline into which they happen to be born. Here we are preserving this outdated system for the whole of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth realms, simply because of what is, in effect, English tradition and heritage. Mind you, the cynics here will probably argue that it's German tradition and heritage. I know this event here is to promote the petition against the armed forces recruiting in schools, but as we're just about to have to put up with what will undoubtedly be a sickening display of pomp and pageantry and a wonderful Jubilee celebration weekend, I want to take this opportunity to state proudly and clearly that I support a move away from being a constitutional monarchy, and as a member of Plaid Cymru and chair of Plaid Cymru Youth, I'm in favour of Wales, of course, eventually becoming a sovereign, independent nation-state within the EU and as a member of the UN in her own right. But of course, we're here to raise awareness about the fact that the armed forces are still recruiting young people in our schools here in Wales. I'm very proud to support this event and to support the petition which is being launched this evening. I'd like to congratulate the organisers for organising the event, and I would urge you all to sign the petition and lobby your assembly members to support the call to ban the armed forces from going into schools and trying to recruit our young people. Yng Nghymru'r 11 ar 20, does dim angen i'r lluodd arfog fynd mewn i'n ysgolion a cheisio recrwtio pobl ifanc Cymru i'w plith drosodd propaganda'r dalith Brydeinig o'i blaenau. Nid yna'r Gymru dwi'n byw ynddi, na chwaith hi o'r Gymru dwi am weld. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi am eich gwrandawyr.